Welcome back, everybody, to Trudging the Road of Happy Destiny. Trudge is to walk steadily and laboriously, and which means for us is to walk through the steps, and it's not going to be hard. Destiny, a predetermined event that will happen to us from God in the future. And so what that means is God's basically made it that if we work these steps, we are going to recover. That's pretty cool. My name is Dan Habecker, and I am an alcoholic and drug addict. My sobriety date is 1/25/91, and this is because of the fellowship and the program that is in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, so far what we've done is we've learned the problem. We did the doctor's opinion, and the doctor's opinion taught us about the mind and taught us about the craving allergy that is in the body and this illness that we have that we can't conquer on our own. Then we went into Bill's story, and Bill's story showed us, gave us an example so we could look at it and then be able to say to ourselves, am I like this guy or am I not? And then it shows us, okay, if we do see that we are, well, then we are able to see this guy recover from the thing that's killing us. So that gives us hope, because if we're like him and he's able to recover, well, then that means that we should be able to also. And so that's step one, those two chapters. And now we're going into chapter 2, which is there is a solution. And this is the starting of step 2. And what this is going to teach us in this chapter is going to teach us about two powers that are in Alcoholics Anonymous. The first one is the fellowship. And the fellowship is there to guide us, support us, be there for us, and show us the things that we need to do so that we can learn about this recovery. And then we have the second power, which is the power of God. And the reason why we need the power of God is because on our own, we've never been able to recover. Because why? We don't have the power to be able to do it on our own. We have a lot of willpower, we have a lot of knowledge, but we've never been able to get ourselves to, one, not have the obsession to drink, and we've never been able to make it to where we can control our drinking. And so if I've never been able to do that on my own power, obviously it means I need some other kind of power. And if my mind isn't able to do it, well, then that means all of the people, the fellowship, are all just as powerless as I am. They may have information, they may have knowledge, but they don't have the power for me to recover either. And so that means I need to find some kind of power that is stronger than the human mind. And so this chapter is going to give us the information of the fellowship. And in the very start of this chapter on page 17, what it's going to do is it's going to teach us these two powers. And the beginning of the first half portion of this chapter from 17 to page 24 talks about the fellowship, and it talks about the non-alcoholic people who are always wondering and asking questions about us. So it's going to basically teach us about fellowship and the human mind and why it doesn't work. The second part is going to go into the problems that we have, and then it's going to tell us the solution to these problems of our mind so that if we can get this other power into our life, we will be able to find recovery. And so on page 17, it starts off and it says we. And what they mean there is the first 100. Of Alcoholics Anonymous, know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. And so that gives us hope, because we've seen these Bill make a recovery, and they're saying that these other people were able to make this recovery. Well, we should be able to. And then it says, I just lost myself. I'm sorry. They have solved the drink problem. And so this, like I said again, is giving us hope. And what we're going to read now is it's going into the people now. And this is the people that are in AA. And so it says, we are average Americans or people across the world. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. The fellowship is so wonderful, so strong, loving, and beautiful that you can't help yourself from falling in love with it. But we have to remember and be careful with that, because if we try to just stay sober on that power and we're the real alcoholic, at some point it'll fail us. And so now he turns around and he says, we are like passengers of a great liner. The moment after shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage, which is poor, to the captain's table, and which is the rich. And so what he's telling us is our occupations, our political, our amount of money, none of that stuff matters. None of it. The only thing that we have, two things in common, but the one thing that he's talking about now that we have in common is we cannot take a drink without developing the phenomenon of craving, losing control, and not being able to stop drinking or control the amount. That's what we have in common. And so he's saying how we are people that we shouldn't mix, we shouldn't be together. But because of this problem that we have of not being able to control our drinking, we can come together in joyousness. And just like these people after shipwreck, they're just happy to be alive and be together. Well, that's the same as us. And then it says, unlike the feeling of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. And so these people, they get off whatever, they get saved, they get on land. The only way they're going to have any attempt or any way of ending up in another shipwreck is if they jump on a ship. And so when they go their individual ways, they leave whatever they this guy's poor, well, he's not with me, I'm rich. So anyway, they go their separate ways. They don't have nothing to worry about, like I said, unless they jump on another boat. But when we go our separate ways, well, alcoholism is still here. Alcoholism ain't going nowhere, because alcohol's still out there. Drugs are still out there. And so we're left to ourselves if we leave on our own. And it says, the feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. And that right there is the fellowship. The fellowship is so strong. It's so powerful and so loving and so care that it binds us together, which is what? Because of our drinking, we have that in common, and it holds us and brings us together stronger than cement. But now, he's going to give us a warning. And he says, but that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. And so he's saying at the very beginning, but that in itself would never have held us together. All right, that part right there. He's saying the fellowship. The fellowship can't hold us together. And then he says the second part, as we are now joined. So you take the first part, the people, and then now we're joined with the power of God. You put those two powers together, and then that is enough for us to recover from the disease of alcoholism. And now he says, the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. And so this is the power of God. And what is common about it? Well, it has certain details or certain things that we have in common. Which one is we get power from this, and it changes our personality enough to be able to recover from alcoholism. It does that for all of us. It may happen at different times. It may happen in different ways. And it may happen, your personality may change a little different than mine, whatever. But that in itself, all of that, it will do for each and every one of us. That's what is in common with it. And so those are the two things we have in common as people in Alcoholics Anonymous, having problems with drugs, alcohol, whatever, is we cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving and then losing control. And then the power of God, which is going to change us so we can have this personality change, which is strong enough to recover from alcoholism. We have a way out, and which is out of the hell that we're living in, on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. And the great news is not the fellowship, but the great news is the common solution, which is a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, spiritual power, God, whatever you want to call it. But that's the great news that it gives to us. And so then it says on, let's go to page 18. And it says, an illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it, an illness, involves those about us in a way no other sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one is hurt, or no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. And that's because the illness that we have, one, people don't understand. They think just stop or have power or whatever. And because we don't do those things, they think that, well, we're acting this way just because we don't care or we want to. And then it says, these are the problems that we cause from our drinking and because of living life our own way. It is that it engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. And we hope this volume will inform and confront those who, or comfort those who are or who may be afflicted. And so now what he told us is these are the things, well, when we do the fourth step, we'll learn more about it. But these are the things because of our drinking that we do that harms other people. And that's what makes it to where people basically don't want us around, or it because we hurt them. Is basically all it is. Now let's go to page 20. And now on page 20, the second paragraph, it says this, and now this is the non-alcoholic people who don't understand us. And it says, you may already have asked yourself why it is that all of us became so very ill from drinking. Doubtless, you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary. We have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking yourself, what do I have to do? And what do you have to do? We have to work the steps so that we can get and build a relationship with God. It is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. We shall tell you what we have done. And so what they're going to do is they're going to tell us precisely, specifically, with clear-cut directions on what they did. And it worked for them. So if we do the same thing they did, we can expect to get the same thing they got, which is recovery from alcoholism. And these, I messed up. These are the questions that the non-alcoholic or other people ask us or don't understand. They misunderstand. It says, how many times people have said to us, I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he would stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him. But there he is, all lit up again. Now these are commonplace observations on drinkers which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. And that's because they don't have the mental obsession and they don't have the physical allergy and they don't understand it. So they keep thinking, well, we should just be like them and stop. And really, if you think about it, and we're the opposite. We think that they should be able to drink like us and understand everything and not ask those kinds of questions. And now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 types of drinkers. And if you're a drinker, you'll fall into one of these categories. And we're going to talk about the moderate, the hard drinker, and then the real alcoholic. Number one, the moderate drinker have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. And those are the people that you see that they have a couple drinks, they put it down, they're done, they don't want no more. And you always, I would at least, why don't you drink more? And they're like, I've had enough. I don't want no more. And these people, they can turn around and they can just put it down, walk away, and never care. Or if they had to turn around and never drink again, no, it wouldn't bother them. They don't care. Then we have a hard drinker. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor become operative, this man can stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. And now this guy, he's the man who he drank like us, may have even done certain things like us, but he doesn't have the obsession that when he's not drinking and he's trying to honestly stay away from it, and then at some point his mind says, it would be okay to have a drink now, and then believe it and then start drinking again. He doesn't have that problem. And then if he does pick up a drink, he doesn't have the craving in the body that once he takes a drink, he cannot stop. So this man can either put it down or go back to it. I never understood this one. I like my brother. My brother, I swear to God, was an alcoholic. He drank like me, acted like me, did drugs, sold drugs. If there was an alcoholic, it had to be him. And then he ended up getting a tattoo, and he got hepatitis, 2 or 1 or whatever, I don't know. But he got hepatitis from it. And they told him he can't drink no more. He just put it down. Didn't bother him at all. And every once in a while, he'll go out with buddies or have a football game or whatever, and he'll have a beer or two and then stop and start drinking a Coke. That blew my mind. I could never, ever do anything like that. And like I said, I swore he was an alcoholic, but he wasn't. He's the hard drinker. They drink like us, act like us, but something happens and they're able to put it down and it doesn't bother them. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker, and some people do. Some people can drink for years before they cross that line. But once they cross that line, there's no going back. So some people can drink for me. The very first drink I took, I was full-blown gone alcoholic. And it says, he may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And the reason that this is because he has the physical allergy. And this allergy, once you have it, it doesn't go away. And so once he picks up a drink, he can't stop. He has no control over his liquor consumption once he starts. And right now, Bill is talking about the physical allergy. He's not talking about the mind and thinking about it. Right now, he's just talking about the physical allergy. And so here, as we read this, think about yourself and see if you find yourself in here somewhere. Here is a fellow who's been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genes of getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet early next morning, he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. And as matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear in hospitals and sanitariums. And that's because once he takes a drink, he cannot stop. He loses all control. And once we lose control, we'll never get it back. As for me, I fit into all of those categories. And the biggest is for you to see if you fit in there and see with you if you lose control once you start to drink or do drugs. Can you stop every time when you want? If you picked up a drink right now and said you wanted to have 3, can you stop? Not just today, but every time you pick up a drink. If you're a real alcoholic, there's no way that you can do that. And then it says, this is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic. But our behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify him roughly. And because all that we have in common is our lack of control. And all the different ways that this guy went through it doesn't really matter. What matters is every time that he did pick up a drink, he lost all control and couldn't stop. And that's what he's saying for us to be able to see. And then it says, this is still people asking, not just alcoholics, but non-alcoholics asking too. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle, which is disaster, with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that first drink? And he takes the first drink because restless, irritable, discontent. And then you drink long enough, well, now you're full of fear, shame, guilt, remorse. Now, I don't care who you are. Nobody can live with all that stuff running through their head. That drives us back to picking up a drink. Why? Because it changes the way that we feel. So that's why he continues to go back picking up the drink, even though he sees the problem. Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of his common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? And this is because our willpower isn't able to do it. Our willpower, anybody, your mind power, willpower, however you want to call it, can only work to what you believe. So if I would believe that drinking is wrong and bad for me, and that thought would never change, then willpower would work great, and I'd never drink. But what happens with me and real alcoholic is at some point my mind flips. And my mind says, well, one drink would be all right. I mean, who can get drunk on a pint? I mean, come on, pint of vodka? You can't get drunk on that. And my mind starts toying with it. And now the moment that my mind starts toying with it and I'm not able to stop that, well, that's when it turns into an obsession. And an obsession is only an idea that is stronger than any other idea, and then it leads us to believe something that is not true. We're telling ourselves not to drink, fighting it with willpower. Then the mind flips. The mind flips and then tells us, well, it would be okay to have one. Well, you should be able to handle one now. You've been sober 90 days. I mean, come on, man. Anybody sober 90 days has proven they're not an alcoholic. And once my mind does that, now my mind is believing it's okay. So there's no reason to fight it. And then that's why willpower won't work. And then that's why we end up going back to a drink. And it says, perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. And back when they wrote this, like I said earlier, is they didn't know anything about the craving in the body. They knew the craving was there, but they didn't know why. And they didn't know about metabolism and all that kind of stuff. And so not knowing that, well, now they're saying they see it. They don't know it completely, but it doesn't really matter. They're saying straight out, well, if you're like this and you want to get over it, there's things that you have to do. And it says, we are not sure why once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We are equally positive that once he takes any alcohol whatever into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. And it's not that we only drink when we feel bad. I mean, we drink when we feel good. It doesn't matter. It's when our minds turn around and tell us it's okay to drink, we believe it, and then we drink. It doesn't matter if you're feeling good, bad, indifferent, whatever. The main reason when we do drink usually is because, yes, we don't feel good, and we know that a drink will change the way we feel, and so we go back to it. But once we pick it up, it then bodily and mentally, because after we pick up the first drink, well then, now what happens is we're going to go into guilt, shame, remorse of picking up a drink and not being able to stop. We pick up the drink, then we lose all control. When you lose all control, you end up doing things that, well, wouldn't be right or whatever it may be. And there's what I like about this also is people are like, oh, well, that human nature is it's not like it was back in the 30s or whatever. We're different today and all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, it's like it just got done talking. And if you go to the Bible and you go to Proverbs 23, and then you read from 29 to 35, it says, who has woe, who has sorrow, who has conflict, who has complaints, who has wounds with no reason, who has redness of eyes, those that linger over wine, those who go looking for mixed wine. Then it says, don't gaze at wine when it is red, when it gleams in the cup and goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and you will say absurd things. You will be like someone sleeping out at sea or lying down on the top of a ship's mast. They struck me, but I feel it at no pain. They beat me, but I don't know it. When will I wake up? When I wake up, I'll look for another drink. And that's a perfect description of alcoholism then, today, and it's never changed. And now it's like 5,000 years ago. So we don't need to worry about if we're different today or anything like. All that's telling us is that we have the same problem today as they had back then. And so if you have this compulsion, this allergy in the body, it will never go away. And so then he tells us, the experiment of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Because if we don't take the first drink, we can't crave it. If we don't take the first drink, we don't have to worry about getting drunk. Because you can't get drunk if you don't take the first drink. And so then he says, he's going to tell us where the real problem is. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind rather than in his body. Every time I went back out to drink, my mind was stone cold sober. There was no alcohol in me. at all. So I wasn't craving any alcohol. And then I went out and I drank. Then the allergy took off. But what is the most important thing? Why did I go back and pick up a drink? Not because of the body. I went back and picked up a drink because of my mind. And so that's where the work needs to be done. But if I was able to do that on my own, I would have done it a long time ago. And that's why the power that we work with, God, however you want to call it, but like I said, he says God 137 times, I think he means God, will give us the personality change which is sufficient to recover. And what is that? Our ideas, emotion, and attitude towards the world, towards ourselves, and God completely change. So if we're able, which is all the mind, to work with this God and change those things, we won't pick up a drink. If we can't and don't change those things, at some point if we're the real alcoholic, we'll pick up a drink. And so the main problem centers in our mind. To be able to work with the mind so that we don't believe it's okay to drink. If we can do that with these two powers, we'll never have to worry about drinking again. And then it says, this is after we went back and started drinking. If you ask him why he started on that last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc, which is widespread destruction an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. And these excuses are like lost my job, not feeling good, went to jail, divorce court, whatever, all kinds of things that just go on in life. Normal things, broken shoestrings, burnt bacon, whatever it may be. And you end up going back to pick up a drink. Why? To feel better. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head so that he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious, and what that means is based on a mistaken belief. So we believe something that, well, is mistaken. Reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic. He will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. How many times people talk about our drinking or even the habits that go along with it, and sometimes we'll, we'll laugh about it. I'm an alcoholic, but really inside we're pissed. Or we will be pissed, and then I'm not going to talk, and I want you to be away from me. Those kind of people, I would push them out of my life. If you talked about my drinking or drug use, hey man, you're gone. I don't need you in my life. And then he says, once in a while he may tell the truth. And the truth, strange to say, is usually he has no more idea why he took the first drink than you have. And this is because of the obsession in the mind. And the obsession will always be telling us that one drink or drug will be okay this time. And we are looking for the drink. Why? Because we don't feel good. Because we want that sense and ease of comfort that come from taking the one drink. And we honestly want to just have the one drink or the one hit or whatever that's going to just calm us down, make us feel good. We're not able to do this on our own. So if I have a drink, I'll relax. I'll feel okay, everything. And I believe that I can do it. I'll believe that, well, maybe I can make it work this time. I believe that. I pick up a drink and then I'm done. I'm gone. Some drinkers have excuses which they are satisfied part of the time. And that's because bills, things not going right, whatever, we're mad at people, but we believe those things to be true and a good reason to drink. But in their hearts, they really do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold, they are a baffled lot. There is the great obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. And what this means is be able to drink without consequences, to be able to drink normally and not get in any kind of trouble. Now I lost myself. That they will beat the game. But they often suspect they are down for the count. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will arouse himself from his lethargy. And what this means is his decreased motivation, depression, and or fatigue, and assert his power of will. But we've learned that willpower can't do this. And so we'll never be able to assert enough willpower to not drink. The tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may never arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. And this is because of the mental obsession. And it's more powerful than our will to not drink. And this is when we need God's help, because God will change the way that we think. He will change our willpower enough so that we are able to recover. And then it says, this tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. Before I came into AA, I knew I had a problem. Before I came here, I knew I had no control. I knew that there was something wrong with me. It was suspected long before I even came here. And now what he's going to talk about is he's going to tell us when we're trying to stay sober on just our mind, what's going to happen. And it says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And that's powerless. And we are powerless over the mind. At this point, when it comes to alcohol, this is why we are now this is now why we're working step 2. Because step 2 is to get power into our lives. And if we are able to work with this power and the fellowship, we will find recovery. But if we're not able to do that, then we'll end up going back to a drink. Why? Because I cannot remember the pain of the past. Why? Because God made our brains that way. We are meant to forget pain. I might not forget totally the situation. I may still remember that, yeah, it hurt, but I cannot remember the complete pain and humiliation of what I went through the last time, because God made our brains able to forget. Why? Because if I had to think of everything I did wrong and feel everything that I've done wrong in my life, I'd blow my brains out. There's no way that a person could live like that. That's why it's designed, our brain is designed to forget that stuff. And, well, if my mind's designed to forget what my last drunk was, what makes me think that I'm going to stay sober by trying to remember the last drink? I can't remember the last drink, because when I look at it, I see what it did for me. I don't see what alcohol or drugs did to me. I see what they did for me. What did they do for me? They made me on the inside looking out. They handled problems. When I did have situations, I could find a way through them. It made me feel good. It made me forget about the pain I was in at that moment. That's why we drink as the real alcoholic. And so we can't stay sober. When people tell you in AA or in meetings, the fellowship, and they'll turn around and tell you, oh, well, remember your last drunk. Well, don't even try it. It just got done telling us right here that it doesn't work. And really where this story came from, I can't go through all of it, but it is on a CD out there. And Bill was talking about on November 11th, 1934, when he went back out. And he went out and he got on a bus and he was going to go golfing. And when he got on the bus, there was a guy with a rifle. And so Bill was like, I'm going to sit next to this guy with a rifle, because you see somebody with a gun, I want to know what he's going to be doing. And he sat down next to this guy and started telling him his whole life story. All his drinking, all the problems, everything that he lost, everything that went on with his whole life, everything. And the guy was like, man, you are remarkable. I can't believe that you're able to stop. I got people, I have friends that are in jail. I have friends that are dead. I have friends that, they're insane asylums because they can't stop drinking. And you look like you've beat the game. And Bill kept talking to the guy because he was making Bill feel good. And Bill's at a point in his life and in his drinking, like we studied before, where nobody talks anything good about him. And so here's this guy talking good about him. He's like, man, I got to hang on to him. And so he kept talking with them. They ended up in a bar 2 times. And the guy was like, I can't believe you're sitting here looking and you got all this booze and you're drinking ginger ale. And Bill said, I knew the doctor was wrong. I beat the test. I can do this. And so they ended up in a bar, which was at the golf course, and they're sitting there and they're eating, and the guy, he has whiskey and ginger ale, and Bill has ginger ale. And then the bartender walks up and puts down 2 drinks, and he says, here, boys, this is for Armistice Day. They're on the house. And Bill, without even a thought, picked it up and drank it. And the guy looked at him, and Bill said he had the most stupidest look on his face. And he looked at me and he said, mister, you have got to be crazy after everything you have been through to pick up that drink. And Bill looked at him and he said, you know what? I am crazy. And Bill got drunker than hell and never went golfing. Bill just got done telling this guy every problem he had, everything that he went through, all the people that he hurt. And it didn't keep him sober. He picked up a drink right there. So what does that tell me? Me just trying to remember the past, let alone talking about it, is never going to keep me sober. Human mind is not enough for us to recover on. We have to have the power of God, which can change us, because we don't have the power to change on our own. And so this is why we have to search for this. And how do we search for it? We work the steps. And then it says, the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. And threadbare, what that means is it's a worn out idea. It's not there. It has no power. It means nothing. And this is plain insanity, because we'll never be able to drink because of the physical allergy. And so because of this, and our minds turning around and believing that we can drink, is where our real problem is. That's where we have to put the work into, because we can't change the body. Can't do anything about it. But if you don't put no alcohol or drugs in it, you can't crave. So we have to work on this desire that is in the mind. And it says, there is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the third or fourth pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sake, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink. Or, what's the use anyhow? When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. And now, if we have placed ourselves beyond human aid, which is the human mind, then we need to seek something that is more powerful than the human mind. There's only one thing that is more powerful than the human mind. Well, something that's not human. God. And it says, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legends of alcoholics throughout history. And that's like I just got done reading. And Solomon, I mean, this guy was like the massive smart guy, counselor, whatever you want to call him, of that day, and he couldn't figure out alcoholism. And so if he couldn't figure out alcoholism, what makes us think that we can? And so trying to do it on our own won't work. But now he's going into the real good stuff now. He says, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands of more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot. And it is the grace of God that we're able to sit here today. A lot of people don't realize how lucky we are to have AA. Because for thousands and thousands of years, what did we do? We just died. The stark and ugly facts for us is that we're either going to go insane or die. There's nothing else. But now they made AA, which God made AA, and now it's here for us. And if we work this program, not the fellowship, the program, which is in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, we can recover. And we don't have to be these convincing demonstrations of people basically dying for years. We don't have to be that no more. We have, by the grace of God, this program so that we can recover and be happy, joyous, and free and live life. I mean, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty damn good to me. So now here's the answer. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. And what that is to work steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. And because that's what cleans out our mind. The only, I lost myself here. Sorry. But we saw that it really worked in others. And these are the people that we see that 12-step does, or we see in meetings. And we see these people, and there's no way that you can't begin to hope that this can happen for you, especially when you see hundreds of people saying, by the grace of God, by the help of God, the God of my understanding. You see that, it's like, okay, there's something here. I mean, you can't see that many people saying this is what it is and not believe that it can't be there. It's got to be there. And so then it says, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. And this is what made us willing to come and start working these steps. Pain. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. And these are the people that we see in the program. These are the people that have come and helped us. These are the people that we see them saying that, well, God did this and God did that and got me to this point. Well, we believe in this now. And because of watching them be able to do it. And the spiritual tools that are laid at our feet is when we start working the 12 steps. That's what's laid at our feet. And this is what will take us from being hopeless to being hopeful. Then it says, we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. And this dimension can only be felt by after working the steps, and we change with God. You can't explain it. You can only feel it. And Bill talks about this twice, once in his story and once here on page 25. And it says, the great fact is just this, and nothing less, that we have had a deep and effective spiritual experience, which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and towards God's universe. And so what that's saying is we have changed. God has changed our ideas, emotions, and attitude. And where it says we have revolutionized our whole attitude, well, that's our mind. Then it says toward life and towards our fellows, the people of the world, and then God's universe. And as you can see, there's the asterisk there, and next to spiritual experience. This means that we're going to go to the back of the book, and in the back of the book, it will explain what a spiritual experience is. Well, now we're up to the 4th edition, but the 1st edition didn't have it. And a lot of people would ask Bill, well, what do you mean by a spiritual experience? We're not having what you had, which he had that white flash. And so in the 2nd edition, they put the asterisk there and then put in the back of the book spiritual experience to help people understand what this means. And in the 3rd edition, it's on page 569, and the 4th edition, it's on 567. So let's go back to the spiritual experience and then see what he means by it. And it says, the term spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. So it's happened in many different ways. Many different people have different feelings with it or whatever. But what did it really do? Well, just like it said here, personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. That's the thing that is in common. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals, which is something that happens fast and it's like overwhelming, and it's I don't know, it's really great and happens immediately. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. Sorry. And what that means is it's wrong or it's mistaken. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described, though it was not our intention to create such an impression. Many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediately and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. And this is a spiritual experience that happens fast, and people were like, we're not having that. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such changes, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. And this is a spiritual awakening which happens through the time of studying the book, going through the steps, and as we learn and apply, we change. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He frequently realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reactions to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. And so they're saying that from working the steps, it shouldn't take a long time to have this personality change, and which is spiritual awakening. But he's also saying in there is on our own, trying to do this for years, it ain't going to work because our own power is not enough. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. And unsuspected inner resource, well, that's telling us where God is. He's inside of us. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems, in which we do that in 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, in the light of our experience, can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual conceptions. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. And so which that means is these things are absolutely necessary. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. And what that's telling us is we just want to be totally smart. We know everything. Oh, that can't happen. And you're ignorant. He's saying investigate it. Put work into it. Find out if it's true. And if you put the work into this and you are a real alcoholic, there's no denying that it works. And then it says the central fact. Well, let's go back to page 25. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has come in to accomplish those things for which we could never do by ourselves. And so God changes our ideas, emotions, and attitudes. And if these things are changed, then we will see the difference, or see a difference in God, in our lives, and a difference in the world and people in it. And if we can see a difference in all those things, we don't need to drink. Because that's why we drank. We drank because we couldn't deal with these things. We drank because we didn't like the way we felt. And so if we can get these things to change, then our mind won't go back to wanting a drink. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. And us as alcoholics, we only have two. There isn't three, there isn't four, there is only two. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, which is step one, and to continue drinking until we die. And the other, to accept spiritual help, and which is step two, and that's the personality change. That's the answer to the problems that we have. And if you see, if we are seriously alcoholic, and so he's saying that if we're alcoholics like them, well, then we have to do this. We have to look at this. We can't keep pushing it to the side. We can't keep trying to do this on our own, because it's proven we can't do this on our own. If I could do this on my own, I wouldn't be here. If I could do it on my own, where would I be? Well, I'd go out and drink and be able to have a couple and go home. I can't do that. If I could do it with willpower and friends, I would have stopped a long time ago. I can't tell you how many friends told me, Dan, you need to stop drinking, man. You can't drink. So all kinds of people wanted me to stop, but I couldn't. Then it says, this we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. Why are we honestly willing to do this? Because of pain. We've been beat to our knees. We're in a position where life is impossible. We cannot see living this way anymore. And we can't see existing like this. So we're at a point, most of us, we'd rather die than continue living this way. So we are there. Then he says, and willing to make the effort. What's the effort? Work the steps. They're not hard. Work the steps. If you work these steps, you're guaranteed to recover from alcoholism. Guaranteed. It's not a hope. It's not a wish. It's not somebody just giving you empty dreams. It is a fact that if we work all 12 steps exactly the way the big book says, now I don't know, you can get something else doing it a different way, and it may work. But what I do know is if you work this program the way that these steps are put out in the big book, not any other way, you are guaranteed to recover, find happiness, joy, and freedom in life, and never have to drink again. That's pretty cool to me. What we're going to read now is somebody who drank like us, had a drinking problem and everything, and wasn't able to stop. And he went to go and see this doctor to help him be able to stop. So he's going to give us an example. And so a certain American businessman, which his name is Roland Hazard, had ability, good sense, and high character. But none of these things could keep him sober. For years, he had floundered, which is to struggle helplessly, which I know I did that, from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist, Dr. Jung. And at first, Roland, his family had a lot of money, and he tried to work with Freud. And Freud just didn't have the time to be able to work with him. And so then he went to go work with Carl Jung. And Freud and Jung used to be together, and they fell apart because Jung believed that spirituality may work for some people. He didn't understand it, didn't know nothing about it. But he believed that, hey, it might be able to work for certain people. And Freud believed everything could be done with the mind and the mind alone. And so they fell apart. And so now, and thank God, he went to go see Dr. Jung. And then it says, the doctor who prescribed for him, though experience had made him skeptical, which is the doctor was skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. And now that's Roland Hazard. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. Now, I'm not sure if this is true, but I heard that he got drunk on the plane home because he had to go. He went over to Switzerland. More baffling still, which is Roland, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. And so this is because self-knowledge will not cure or fix alcoholism. Self-knowledge is great, but it's not enough. So he returned to this doctor, whom he admired, and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems. Yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? And because after we take the first drink, the allergy takes over and we can't stop. And then trying to stay sober on our own willpower, well, it's already been proven our willpower can't do it. And then it says, he begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth. And he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. And when they say that in the book here, hopeless, what that means is you're 100% beyond human aid. So if you're 100% beyond human aid, you better find something that's beyond human. He could never regain his position in society and would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth, where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remain willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. And this is a warning, and the warning is that we must keep this simple attitude. And how do we do that? By continually working steps 10, 11, and 12. And we have to do these every day. And if we do that, we don't have to worry about drinking. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic." And so he's telling him that his problem centers in the mind and in the body. He's telling him that with mental, your mind is always going to lead you to believe it's okay to drink. And then the physical, the body, is never going to be able to control. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind exists to the extent that it does in you. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. And so he felt completely, utterly hopeless. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor. "There is exceptions to such cases as yours have been occurring since early time. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital, which is something that's like necessary for life. You can't live without it. Spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are a phenomenon. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them." And what is this? This is a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, a personality change that is sufficient enough to recover from alcoholism. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. And this is telling us, this is the second asterisk, and it's telling us to go back to the appendix 2, and read it so that you can learn, well, what is he talking about with this spiritual experience. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. And this is because in church, you pray to God for your help. And, well, that works for some people. But for us, there's steps that we have to take. We have to learn why we are this way. We have to learn, why do we act this way? Why do we go back to a drink? What is in the mind that deters us from being sober to going back and believing we can drink? That's the difference. Both need God. Both work with God. The only difference between it is there's steps and stuff that we need to do in order for it to work. And then he turns around and he says, I screwed up, I'm sorry. And then, here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We, in our turn, sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. And this is because they were completely hopeless, but were honest enough to try and do something. What seemed at first a flimsy reed, and that's because they had no faith in God or even in the steps of the program to work. So it was a flimsy reed, has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. And so he's telling us that if we can get this power and the fellowship power, we will recover. What starts out as a flimsy reed, what starts out as not having power, turns into having power. We cannot start off with faith. Faith is an after product. Faith comes after doing the work. And so after we do the work, we let God help us and we recover. That's the end for this chapter. And I hope that it gave you more information so that you can start studying on step 2, learning about the chapter and what he means with the fellowship and what he means with the spiritual experience, and helps you to be able to open your mind a little bit, or if your mind is already open, be able to see what you can have if you work this program. I have a book out there, A Road to Recovery by Dan H. You can get it on Amazon. And it has all this information in there and 10 times more than what I can put on here that you can listen to. And if you want to get it, it's out there. You don't have to, but if you want to, it's out there. Hopefully you listen to this and you get what you want out of it. If you get it, well, like it and subscribe and send it to other people so that they can get the same help. I will be doing the more about alcoholism next, but everybody have a great day, and I will talk to you later. All right, bye.